I want to talk just a moment about the multiplicative inverse. The multiplicative inverse, um, basically all it is, let's say I have 2, for example, if I can make this thing right. 2. Okay, the multiplicative inverse of 2 is 1/2. Now, if you take a look at this, any whole number can have 1 at the bottom, and now we can kind of see the relationship that it just flips. All right, and if it just flips, we call that the reciprocal, or just the inverse, it has been called before. So you may see some of those terminologies used there. All right, so where do we use the multiplicative inverse? Well, there's a couple of different places we would use the multiplicative inverse. The first one would be if we had, I don't know, let's call it 3/4 x equals 16, and you want to go ahead and you want to solve for that. Well, yes, you can divide both sides by 3/4, right? Well, that, yes, anything divided by itself is 1, and you can get x on the left side. But then you have this complex fraction over here. So really what we end up doing, if I back this guy up, is we're going to try to simplify that a little bit, and we'll just say, okay, but if we multiply by the multiplicative inverse, or the reciprocal of 3/4, which is 4/3, now what I do to one side, I do to the other. This side, anything divided by itself is 1, just like we had before, and here we get 64/3, because 3 doesn't reduce with 16 and 4. So there's my answer. The other place we'll get the multiplicative inverse is here, when we're talking about lines, and this is a line in slope-intercept form, and the m is the slope value. Well, when we're talking about slope value, let's just make our m, I don't know, let's go 3/2. Okay, and we want to make a line that is perpendicular to that line. When we talk about lines perpendicular to that line, it must have a perpendicular slope. Well, the perpendicular slope right here must be the opposite, and we talked about opposites when we talked about the additive inverse. So the positive must be a negative, and then it's got to be the reciprocal, which is 2/3. So as you can see, we will use the multiplicative inverse in a couple different fashions. One's when we talk about perpendicular lines, the other one's when we solve and we got to divide off fractions from our variable. Once again, our multiplicative inverse.